Welcome everybody to Living Well with MS. My name's Shona DaubÄ and I'm the MS Community Advisor for the Wairarapa. Now today I'm going to do things a little bit differently in that I haven't long been in this role, as I've told you before, and I thought it was an ideal opportunity to get on the show people who know a lot more than I do. So what I'm hoping to do is get Gillian Fry and Catherine Jourdain, who are the MS Community Advisors in other areas of the Greater Wellington. And I'm hoping that we can tap into their knowledge and talk about some of the things that really are probably the questions that many of us are asking all the time, those with MS. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to have a talk to them about some of those ongoing issues that we have, some of the common, what would I say, common complaints, common symptoms. And I think it's always important to remember that, yes, everyone's MS is quite different. Your MS is not necessarily the same as someone else's MS, but there are certainly things that are in common. And, you know, it's really good to hear what other people are coping with. It sort of makes your journey a little bit more comfortable sometimes, just knowing you're not the only one out there. So I'm just waiting for Gillian and Catherine to join us on the call, and we can start asking them some of those things. And I think especially when you're newly diagnosed, this is often a confusing time. You often feel very alone, and I'm hoping that once you realise that many people have the same sort of symptoms that you do, it might help you to feel a little bit more comfortable. Some of the things we'll be talking about today are things like diet, exercise, stress management, even positive thinking, and of course sleep and rest, which are things that can all help you to live well with your MS. We'll also talk about identifying a relapse. That's probably one of the most common questions that I've already noticed that I get is, how do I recognise when I'm having a relapse? And so we're often confused as to whether those symptoms that we're experiencing today is the beginning of a relapse, or is it just one of the ups and downs of normal living with MS? I thought it would also be good to look at some of the symptom management of those very common symptoms that people have with MS. And the kinds of things I'm talking about are something I think you'll all be familiar with: pain, fatigue, heat management. And that's specifically a concern over here in the Wairarapa, where we have the wonderful summers, and probably less so in Wellington, although I'll probably get shot for saying that. Brain fog, and that perhaps just sometimes feeling difficulty getting your, well, what should I say, brain engaged. And sometimes for people there's a bit of a memory loss, there's perhaps struggling with the right word. And for other people, it's more movement issues like spasticity, muscle tension, restless legs, all those kind of things. So I'm hoping that when Gillian, who sounds like she's here now. Hi, Gillian and Catherine, you're online now. Can you hear me? Hello? Hi, Catherine and Gillian. I think we're having a little bit of problem connecting with them at the moment. Okay, well, hopefully they will try and ring back.
We can certainly hear them, can't we, Shona? Well, sort of little clonks and things.
Perhaps they're doing some tap dancing.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
If your caller can hear you,
Yeah.
I would suggest that they hang up and phone your cell phone, and you hold your cell phone up to the phone and talk to them through that.
Okay, good plan. Okay, so hopefully you'll ring me soon, Gillian and Catherine.
But just...
Yep.
You carry on, Shona. We'll
Okay.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, that's right.
Right, hopefully they're coming through. So, as I was saying, I just really want to talk about some of the things that perhaps newly diagnosed people are concerned about. That
Oh, they're going to try again. Let's give it a go. Okay.
Hello, Catherine, Gillian.
Hello.
Hello, wonderful. We thought we'd lost you there. So great to have you on the call. Are you there? I think, can I suggest, if you can hear me, that you ring me on my cell phone? Okay.
Fun and games, eh, Shona?
Yeah. Now, my apologies for this, everyone. So, probably every 2 years here in the Wairarapa, we run, well, not here in the Wellington region, rather, we run newly diagnosed workshops. And we had one earlier this year, and what was wonderful is that we had, unfortunately, the timing was not great as it was just before the lockdown, but we had at the time about 15 people registered as newly diagnosed in the Greater Wellington region. And so we held a day together, first of all getting to know each other, but also hopefully them making links with one another, because I think one of the most beneficial things you can do is perhaps be in touch with other people who are going through the same
I've
thing.
got a suggestion, Shona.
Yep.
Do you know her number? Give her a call.
Okay.
Meanwhile, have a good chat amongst yourself, listeners. Perhaps this would be a good opportunity to practice that dance that you learned during the COVID-19 lockdown period. And those of you who also learned how to sing the entire Handel's Messiah, perhaps this will be a good opportunity.
And thank you to Michael, who's helping me here because I'm unable to multitask.
Oh, yeah, you'll need...
Hi.
You're having trouble.
We are.
I'll put it by the mic.
So you're actually online now at the moment. So if you could perhaps both talk through your cell phone, that would be great.
Yep, perfect. We've got it on speaker and we're ready to roll.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, I've given a bit of an introduction already in the time, letting everyone know that you were going to be joining the call. Perhaps both of you could say who you are, and then if both of you could say who you are and which regions you represent, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Well, thanks for inviting us anyway. My name is Gillian, and I'm the community advisor for the Hutt Valley, Lower Hutt and Upper Hutt, and also Porirua through to Waikanae. And I'm Catherine, and I'm the community advisor for the southern region, so Miramar, Brooklyn, all that kind of south in Wellington, and then up to Tawa.
Oh, that's great. Hey, and thank you so much for joining us. And once again, my apologies for the little bit of technical difficulties I had there. Now, what is your impression? I'm not actually looking at the actual figures, but what is your impression of approximately how many people do you think are being newly diagnosed each year here in the Greater Wellington region?
Yeah, well, Catherine and I were just talking about that earlier, and it's hard to pick actually, because we worked out that I guess this side of the hill, we probably would have about 15 people who have contacted us and are newly diagnosed, but we know that there are other people out there who haven't contacted us. And talking to neurology, they certainly said that I think last year and early this year there was quite a wave of newly diagnosed people coming on. Would you say that?
Yeah, that sounds right. And we sometimes don't get contacted by everyone, so we just probably don't know exactly how many there are, but the ones that contacted us was probably around 15.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You could easily double that, if not more.
It's, Gillian, you've been in this role the longest. Do you have any sense that that number is rising, or, yeah, and so we really don't know. I mean, because they don't know the actual cause of MS, we really don't know why that's happening, do we?
No, I think, there's still, it's research, obviously, and there's still a lot of theory, but what does seem to be quite apparent is that the newly diagnosed is also affecting countries that previously haven't ever had that extent at all. In places like Japan, it's on the increase, so you can, I guess, make theories and connections about why that is.
Right.
Maybe lifestyle and diet.
Yep. And so, is there any specific, is that changing in New Zealand? I know historically in the past, different cultural groups in New Zealand, I'm speaking here mainly of, say, Māori and Pacifica, is there any increase in those rates in that population, do you think, or not noticeable?
I think we are seeing people in those populations are being more affected.
Right, okay. And what about age range? Are we getting...
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had quite a few young clients certainly come in and see me in the last year. So, I mean, usually the age is somewhere between 30 and 40 a diagnosis, but I'm certainly seeing people younger than that when they're first newly diagnosed.
Right.
Are you as well, Jasmine?
Yeah. But I think working in the city, you've had two teenagers you've been working with in the last 12 months.
Yeah, they're really young people.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how much is due to the fact that there is better diagnosis now, the start of the MRI, and more widespread use of that must be picking up people, So.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess that is a positive in itself, that people are getting diagnosed earlier and potentially eligible for treatments earlier, if that's what they choose.
Right, yeah. Well, that, perhaps that's the positive side of it, really. If you were going to give a newly diagnosed person just a one short message, what would it be?
One short message, probably that they're not alone. There are other people out there with MS as well that they can connect with if they would choose to, and also that because there's so much research, their future doesn't have to look like it did maybe many years ago. There's so many options for treatment and things like that. What do you think, Gillian?
Yeah, I think that assessment, it's not a life sentence. And even though everyone's MS is very, very different, there's a lot, like Kath was saying, there's a lot of research, and so there's perhaps there's a lot more options for people and how they handle their MS.
Yeah. Oh, I would totally agree with all of that. Given the name of this program is Living Well with MS, I wondered if it would be okay with you two if we have a little bit of a talk. And when I think about it, it's probably the things we discussed at the Newly Diagnosed workshop about the things that one of the best chances you have with a person with MS is to be as well as you can possibly be. So what advice do you give around, say, for instance, diet?
I guess it's a little bit tricky because we're not practitioners, so we can't actually guide people on a treatment, and a certain diet can be considered sort of like a treatment. But it is important that people are aware, I think, of different regimes and trying to work out something that's good for them. And I know certainly if, under general advice, I'd say that the best thing that anyone can do is to eat a healthy diet. So, lots of fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, low GI carbs, plenty of lean protein. So if that's the basis, then that's the best thing that they can do. And then from there, some people choose to sort of like branch out and look at OMS, overcoming multiple sclerosis with George Jelinek, or even
Kerry Wall's diet as well. There's a couple of options that are out there at the moment, and they can choose to do those programs, but they probably sometimes aren't that easy to stick to, or they could seem like they're quite restrictive, but some people find them really amazing. And as Julian said earlier, just having that healthy diet is a really great place to start.
Right.
Yeah. For some people, that in itself can be a major change for them.
Absolutely.
So I guess we do try and sort of like work at their pace to help make change easy and palatable. I can say that when we're talking about food.
Yeah. Oh, good pun. Good. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, given that we've all, as community advisors, well aware of things like OMS and the Wall's diet, for instance. So we are not giving advice on that, are we? I want to make that quite clear.
No. Not specific advice, but I think it is a really important part of our role to make people aware of the options out there.
Yeah. And
so people can make an informed decision about whether they would like to choose to do that, and to see some of the outcomes that people have had from these diets. So giving them books on these diets, and they can read through it and see if it would suit them, and look at some of the research around it as well.
Right. I think you put in a really, really good point there about making informed choice for yourself, as a person with MS. So, given all the information and doing something that feels right for you.
Yeah.
What about exercise? Now, this, for some people, it's yay exercise, and for other people, it's not exercise.
Yeah, it's quite polarising, and it's particularly difficult for people if they're suffering from MS fatigue, because trying to sort of find the energy or get motivated to start exercising can feel like a major barrier. So I'll often, with people, refer them initially to physiotherapy to get sort of like a baseline assessment and a tailored exercise program. I think the key message is, though, get moving and keep moving.
Right.
But that is going to look different for probably every person.
Is there any particular part of exercise that you think is important? You know, I'm thinking of in terms of, say, flexibility, balance, you know, aerobic, that kind of thing. Is there anything that you would consider more important, or all much the same?
I think it depends on what the symptoms are that people are experiencing, because if it's spasticity, then stretching is proven to be even more effective than antispasmodic medications. So that can work really effectively for people. For those who perhaps have like a little bit more energy, then sort of like the HIIT training, that's a high intensity training. There's been interesting research that talks about myelin repair and rebuild with that type of training. So it's sort of like short, intense bursts, but it can take a bit getting your head around that sort of activity, and also making sure that people keep cool enough so that they don't have the overheating aspect.
Right. Yep, really important. Now I'm going to ask you about the big S, stress management. You know, stress is something that's part of everyone's life, whether you have MS or not. What significance do you think it plays with MS and the management of MS?
Well, probably from our experiences working with people with MS, sometimes stress and an overload of stress and continued stress can sometimes preclude a relapse of symptoms. So we know that, you know, it's not good for our bodies. It puts stress on our bodies when we're under stress. So I think having like a daily sort of management plan of stress, working out what the triggers are, and working out how to cope with the stresses in our life is really important.
Right. It's certainly, you know, something that we all have. But do you think there's any kind of relationship between stress and relapse?
Certainly, I've seen that a lot when I've been in the role, and just sort of, you know, feedback from clients. I guess, you know, on what Kath was saying in the interaction with the neural system, then stress is just sort of like an overload. So if you've got MS, you've got inflammation, and if you put stress into that, it's very inflammatory.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, I think cause and effect. Like you said before, Shona, like, you know, there's stress in everybody's life. You can't avoid it. So certainly management is the best way of going about that.
Right. What about, I sort of, you know, a little bit cautious to ask this because some people might find this offensive, but where do you think positive thinking plays a part in the managing of your MS?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and whether you call it positive thinking or whether you call it outlook or how you choose to respond, because we all get into sort of like a pattern of thinking, and sometimes that serves us well and sometimes it doesn't. And so how we respond to things can be very, very different, and that response can either be positive or negative. So without being sort of like, you know, a Pollyanna, which is probably not particularly realistic, then I think reframing, if you can reframe, if your pattern is sort of like generally more negative and more self-critical, then if you are able to sort of like reframe some of that thinking, then personally I think that is it's a kind way of working with yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that not being hard on yourself, but you know, being positive.
It sort of makes everything stressful, doesn't it? So if you aren't able to frame things in a kind way to yourself, then you're loading more stress on your body, which in turn has that negative reaction with your health and potentially MS. So yeah, it's pretty important.
Yeah, no, it's a great way of looking at it. Sleep and rest are two things and I know that difficulty in getting off to sleep, getting enough sleep can be difficult for some people with MS, and for others it's just they can't get enough, really. So do you think that plays a role in, how they manage their day-to-day MS?
Absolutely, yeah. Sleep is one of those great... I'd read somewhere that I think a large proportion of New Zealanders are sleep deprived. And that's just in New Zealand, and then you sort of chuck in MS on the top, and that can compound matters.
Gosh, that's quite scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is quite scary. And or if you're sleeping but you're not getting sort of like the refreshment from that, then that causes issues too. And I think also like the sleep issue, I think can be one of the earliest signs of MS, but sort of like some MS activity. So it really is important that you can address that as much as possible. And so all of the, the sleep hygiene factors, all the basics that we all know, but we often don't. Talking about myself here, reading your phone or your internet before you're going to bed, and not drinking coffee, caffeine, and the lead up to going to bed. What else? Gentle exercise during the day, but not sort of like after 5 o'clock. And even sort of like the whole sort of like meditation, just down-regulate the nervous system beforehand.
Right.
So, all of those things are really, really important, but I think people shouldn't be afraid to get professional help if it's not working.
I think that becomes a real danger when you have MS, is that you just say, oh, that's MS and I have to put up with it. And not everything has to be put up with. Some things, can be addressed. Yeah. I wonder if you would like to, or one of you, sort of perhaps talk about relapse and how someone actually identifies whether they're having a relapse.
This could be tricky for people identifying a relapse, because sometimes there are fluctuations on a daily basis with MS, on a sort of a week-to-week basis, or perhaps if they get a bit hot, they might sort of feel some new symptoms come on. So there is like a bit of a sort of a thing to meet to know whether you're having a relapse, and you can always check it with a community advisor or the MS nurse. But usually you would want to see some new symptoms or a recurrence of old for 24 hours, at least 24 hours, that they would last, and usually longer, and that they weren't, that they were 30 days after a previous relapse.
Yeah.
So sort of trying to work out what's new, what's sort of happening with your body, and sometimes maybe talking to someone now through nurse or your GP can help you work that out as well, because it can be a tricky thing.
Right. And then
it can be really cut and dry as well. Yeah. It can be like, oh my goodness, they've woken up with something very different on a day, and it's just completely, I'm having a relapse. But sometimes it's not as cut as dry as that.
I think
newly diagnosed, people who are newly diagnosed, because it feels like everything that's happening to them is probably MS related at that time, and they don't have sort of like the history to be able to go, oh yeah, no, that's just a little bit of tingling there and it's going to go away.
Right, yep.
Quite scary.
Yep, and I think one of the things that someone asked me the other day, and I think perhaps worth clarifying, is that what Pharmac define as a relapse is perhaps not quite the same as what is identified as a relapse in the general information out there, because I think they say it's got to last for 72 hours. Am I correct there?
Yeah, I think there is.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're a person who is waiting for that, sounds horrible, but waiting for that second relapse to meet the eligibility criteria for to receive medication, then, you know, it can become almost an anxiety-related thing, you know, is this enough? So just being aware, I think.
Yeah, and sometimes if my clients aren't quite sure what's happening, I get them to, like, have a bit of a diary going.
Yeah.
And it can be on their phone, it can be through an app, it can be on a notebook, just sort of taking note of these symptoms over a sort of a longer period of time, just to see what's sort of usual for them, and then any changes that take place, and then they can take that to the appointment, or when they ring the nurse, MS nurse, they've got it right in front of them what's been happening.
Yeah, that sounds an excellent idea, because, you know, it's often quite hard to remember all those things and when they happened. So, yeah, great plan. And so when you are, you know, you go off to your doctor or whatever and say, I'm having a relapse, one of the things that they will check out is whether there's any other reason for your symptoms, like an infection or some kind of other illness. And that can be a bit disconcerting sometimes, because you think they're not listening to you.
Could you say that last bit again, Shona? I didn't quite hear that.
Okay, so what I was saying is when you do go to your GP or whatever and say you think you're having a relapse, they will always, first of all, before they look at a relapse, look at any other causes that might be causing you feeling unwell. So they will check you out for an infection or another type of illness. And so that can be a little bit disconcerting for people and think, well, I'm not being listened to. Yeah. So, you know.
I think that needs to be ruled out, though, too, because if you had an infection, it can make your symptoms worse. Or heat, or some other reason. So I suppose it's duty of care from the GP to sort of rule all those things out, even if the person might absolutely know this is a relapse. But I suppose, the GP is just doing what they need to do.
Right.
Just to make sure.
So is there any treatment for a relapse?
Well, there's a number of things that people can do, I guess, to manage a relapse. And in terms of treatment, the most obvious one that springs to mind is steroids. So often people will go on a high-dose steroid just to dampen down their inflammation. It used to be just an IV, but now a lot of people can have oral steroids, which means they don't have to be in hospital. There's also, there's cause and effect, and not everyone can tolerate steroids. You can only have a certain number of them per year. And so the other things that we sort of do try to recommend to people at the same time, or instead of, if they choose to do that with their GP, is dampening down, the inflammation. So the things you can do there are sort of like diet, exercise, stress management, resting. Yeah.
Right. I know, Catherine, at the Newly Diagnosed workshop, a client of yours spoke who had managed a particularly difficult relapse, and she spoke incredibly well about how she managed this relapse. I'm just wondering, off the top of your head, whether you can remember any other things that she said. I know that she was a great speaker to listen to.
Yeah, well, I know that she had some time off work, and then when she went back to work, she was able to rearrange her hours so that she was working sort of some shorter days and not going in on public transport. She also got because she couldn't use her hands for a while very well, she had an OT come and redo her whole computer and mouse and the whole workstation. And at her work, they have where you have the gliding desks, which is getting really common now, where you just go into work and you just go anywhere. Well, she couldn't do that, so she's got her own sort of all set up so that's not an extra stress for her, and doesn't have to sort of change that environment every time she goes in. She also got someone to massage her hands, which were really affected, and she found that really, really good. And she also had a physio come and do some stretching with her, did some exercise treatment with her, and also an occupational therapist came and helped her with some things she needed for the home, and like a seat to sit on so she doesn't get tired in the kitchen, a little perching stool, just some things to make life easier at that time. And so that really, all of those things helped her recover really, really well, including her amazing outlook, and that she just knew that would eventually get better, and they have, in fact, got so much better, and she's done really, really well. But there was a lot of things that she implemented during that time just to help with all aspects of that relapse.
Right. And I think that's important. There's a couple of important things you've pointed out there. One was the wonderful, what's the word? The wonderful allowance, the support that she received from her employer. Which, is really important. I think there's a lot of fear around how your employer will react in that scenario, and it sounds like hers was amazingly supportive, which is just wonderful. And and I think the other thing it's also important for everyone to know that there are people like OTs and out there who can help in many ways, and you can get a referral from your community advisor for OT services, or they can actually assist you in finding services that might be able to help you. Would that be?
Yeah, that's right. And we can help someone going through a relapse, sort of pointing them in so many directions to get the help that they need, and just talk through what solutions will work best for them. So, and there's so many things that can be helpful. So, we're really often a first port of call for people to just chat things through, listen to them, and then get them the support that they need.
Sometimes connecting them with someone else who's gone through that same issue can be, in knowing that they've come out the other end, can be really empowering for people.
Right, yep. That support, that peer support when you have an illness is amazing, and I don't think can be underestimated. Yeah. So we've talked about relapses. Shall we talk about some of the symptoms? I already sort of said that everyone's MS is different, but there are things that probably we'll call them symptoms, that are more frequent. So they're often shared by many people with MS. So any suggestions you have? So I thought the first one I'd begin with was pain. So is there anything that you have come across that you think works well for some people with pain?
And pain is an interesting one, because from working with my clients, people either experience pain or they don't. It seems to be in or out. So it's quite random. But when they have it, it's so debilitating. And I think pain in general, if it's chronic pain, is a very, very hard thing to treat. So it's got to be very tailored, and it's probably got to be like a multi-pronged treatment plan, and involving as many relevant professionals as possible. So certainly I think medication can play a big part, but then sometimes it has a downside in terms of side effects. So it's sort of like trying to get that balance quite a few people have told me that acupuncture seems to work reasonably well for them in terms of managing pain. But once again, that's, I guess the downside is, well, needles for one. Not everyone can tolerate that. But that's an expense. I can hear a phone in the background.
My apologies. I've tuned it off.
So the expense of sort of like natural therapy, things like acupuncture, massage, like with Catherine's client, that was effective. None of it's subsidised, and so for a lot of people that can actually preclude those treatments.
Right, yes. Money can be quite an issue, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. So for pain, I'm thinking activity and exercise, because if you're trying to stimulate the natural endorphins, can actually have a reduction in pain for people.
Right. I suppose a lot of it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about living well with MS. Many of those things like stress management, positive thinking, sleep and rest all don't help the pain, but help your ability to cope with the pain, to manage it. Yeah, it's pretty hard to be positive when, you're in a lot of pain. But
definitely. It's a grinding thing as well.
Yeah.
And it uses a lot of your reserves, and I think it uses a lot of energy just to deal with it. Apparently, cognitive behavioural therapy, or CBT, is proven to be as effective in managing chronic pain as some medication.
Wow.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Because that comes back to sort of outlook and attitude, because it's a reprogramming, it's a different way of sort of thinking and processing thought.
Right. And certainly things like meditation, and which I assume works along the same way, because you're reprogramming, your thoughts with meditation. You're just sort of getting back to sort of neutral thinking, would be one way of putting it, thinking in the now, and then so you...
We spoke to someone recently who did sort of like a yoga meditation practice, which helped with pain and sleep. So, that kind of goes along that sort of same kind of line, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay, what about fatigue? Is this, Gillian, you were saying that people either have pain or they don't. Is fatigue along the same lines, or is it more common, more frequent than that?
I think, so we're both nodding here, Shona. I think fatigue is probably one of the most common symptoms that people experience with MS. And because it's one of those unseen symptoms, other people don't know what's going on or don't appreciate it. But it's debilitating and so frustrating for people. Absolutely. And it does seem to be worse as people are going through a relapse or having a flare-up of other symptoms as well. And it can be really, really difficult. So
some people, have told me that they never actually knew what fatigue really was until they got MS. It's a very specific type of tiredness, isn't it? It's just...
people, if they haven't experienced that, find it really hard to relate, because let's face it, everyone's tired. We're in a sleep-deprived environment, but being tired doesn't compare with MS fatigue. And generally, if you have a good night's sleep, you'll bounce back. But people, we talked earlier, people can sort of like sleep solidly for 8 or 10 or 12 hours, and they still wake up and they're still fatigued.
Right, yep. So anything that you've come up with that people have found useful, for fatigue?
It's a really complex one. It's as complex as pain, but different. It's sort of trying to understand diary, with people with newly diagnosed, and so sometimes a diary, like a fatigue diary, can be useful because if there's a pattern to things happening, then chances are you can reconfigure your day or change tasks around to try and conserve energy.
Right, yeah, and I think that's really important, as a number of people have said to me that they're much more energetic during the day, whereas they find the afternoons much more difficult. And I think it's about working out when, for you, is the most energetic times, and where possible, organising your day around that.
Mm-hmm. And then doing some sort of practical things like putting some boundaries in place and knowing what your limits are. So when you do know your limits, you're not feeling bad about saying no to people who you previously said yes to doing things. Letting your family know just what you can and can't do.
Right. Yeah.
And then also, what we said before about diet and exercise, sort of try and sort of keep to a well-balanced diet and exercising if you can, because that will increase the endorphins, as Gillian said, and help you sort of have that feeling of wellness. But obviously, when you're fatigued, there's a limit to that, and it's can be a bit of a vicious cycle. If you're too fatigued, you don't want to exercise, but even though it can be good, so a little bit might be helpful, and then so on and so on. But then there's also, if you're really, really struggling, you can go and get a medical a consultation and see if there's anything on the medical line that can help as well.
Right, yep.
Yeah, that's really important, because sometimes everything does get lumped into the MS bag, and not the thing that goes wrong is related to MS. So, and especially for women, particularly, could iron deficiency be the cause of this fatigue? And if that's addressed, then it might not solve the problem, but it could improve things significantly. Thyroid, that's another sort of like issue that plays around with fatigue. So I think Catherine's point is a really good one about getting that medical check, is just to rule out any other health condition. I think just adjusting your expectations of yourself as well, because you potentially won't be able to do everything that you used to, and to keep trying to do that is going to set yourself up for a big fall. Right,
yep. And I think that's the big adjustment for many people. It's almost a self-confidence, possibly ego thing about how you view yourself. And I think we all like to believe that we are invincible, and we're essential in the roles we do, and so it's hard to let go of that sometimes and feel that actually maybe I can't do it. I love that saying that says, just remember, no is a complete sentence.
That is good.
Yeah.
We all need to learn that one, don't we?
Absolutely.
Changing patterns and behaviours, maybe learning to be more assertive, like within your family and friends circle, coming up with sort of like a catchphrase that you've taught them, so that when you say that, they know, okay, just back off or be more supportive, but it becomes more acceptable than saying tired, because people don't understand that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Now, how about the management of heat? Now, I know, and I'm going to skate here, of course, because over here in the Wairarapa we have good summers and you don't necessarily have them always. Yeah. But the management of heat is quite an issue for people with MS.
It really can be. It can. And it can make them feel very uncomfortable, and then increase their symptoms for a short time, or for a few hours, or until they cool down again. So it can be really problematic. And it can be quite scary as well if people haven't experienced much of it, because then they think, I'm having a flare-up or an exacerbation or an attack. And especially if it's exercise-related, that might put them off exercise. But I think the important thing to know is that the heat response is a temporary one, and it's not going to adversely affect their MS. They just need to literally cool down, because the mechanical wires are not responding well to being all heated up.
Right. And I think that's where you can make that link between an infection being the cause of a relapse, because your body heats up with an infection. And so, it may mask the symptoms. So if when you are hot and if you are susceptible to heat, you will get that. And it's often quite a rapid return of many symptoms at once. It can be quite unpleasant. So what are some magic things that your clients have told you about that they do to keep cool, or strategies they use? Have you got any wonderful ideas?
Really quick ones. Like one of the quickest ones is drinking a glass of ice cold water. That can be quite instant in its relief. And the other one is, I guess, planning. So if you know exercise, then plan to have some sort of like cold wet towels around, or some icy water where you can put your feet into afterwards. Making sure the room is well ventilated, maybe a fan going. Cooling vests can be really quite effective for a number of people. What else?
Maybe wearing things that are breathable, like cotton clothing.
Yep.
And wearing layers so that you can take them off when you start to feel a bit warm.
Right.
And planning around like the hottest part of the day. So maybe not going out and doing some activity right in the middle of the day when it's really hot. And doing that thing.
And
it's cool, like at night or earlier in the morning.
right.
So there's just about a visitor arrived. Sorry.
My dog just got back from doggy daycare.
Oh, well.
Sorry, you might answer a few questions for us.
Well, that's good.
It wasn't us.
So one client that I know of, she keeps a hot water bottle in the freezer.
Good idea.
And she, uses that to cool down quite quickly.
Yeah,
and in fact, she sleeps with one by her feet every night because her feet...
I've got one client. Oh, sorry.
Sorry? I can hear some lapping of water there in the background.
Talking about water, drinking water is really important to keep you cool. That was what my dog was just demonstrating.
Right.
Yeah. Really needing a cool down. But one of my clients, thinking of water, she put bottles of water in the freezer at night and then takes them out in the morning ready for her day. So she's just drinking ice cold water all day and isn't needing to worry about finding really cool water.
Gosh, it's a good idea, isn't it? One thing I've found which is quite wonderful is putting grapes in the freezer and having them like instant cooling lollies. When you get hot, yes, just whip into the freezer and take out a handful of frozen grapes and suck on those.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, very delicious.
Yeah, a bit of a treat at the same time.
Yeah. Now, the last thing that I think we'll talk about today before we finish up is that all elusive brain fog that often people with MS complain about. Have you any thoughts on that? Tell me what you think about brain fog.
That's a really complicated one.
Well,
the impact that it can have is huge.
Yeah.
And I think to get, I guess, good advice, where you can maybe chat with one of your community advisors, because there are a lot of techniques that people can employ to sort of like, to change things or sort of try something different. Occupational therapists are often a really good person to sort of get on board when it comes to brain fog and cognition impact, because they've got lots of tools and techniques and tricks up their sleeve that can help.
Right.
But it can fluctuate. Like with some people, I know it's there fairly constantly, and other people it can fluctuate. So there does seem to be, I've noticed, the link between fatigue and brain fog.
Right.
Which makes sense. I know when, in general, if people are feeling tired, then it seems to affect their cognitive processes.
Have you got any pieces of wisdom there, Catherine?
I'm not sure, because it is so tricky. If it's something that they struggle with a lot, then things like making lists, especially if they have brain fog to the extent that, just having trouble recalling things, or if they're having things up on the calendar is helpful. And then trying to rest when they can, if they're feeling that they're in the brain fog and it's connected to that fatigue, just ensuring they get a bit of a rest during the day to see if that sort of helps, get them back on track. But it can be something that can be sort of an ongoing issue. So, using technology can be really great if it works.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah.
Things like putting reminders in your phone that can actually be amazing. It can work so well. If you have sort of like a regular appointment. Absolutely.
And sometimes things like the heat sensitivity, that can also exacerbate things like brain fog. If you're just so overwhelmed with symptoms because you're hot,
absolutely. So there's quite a connection, isn't there, between a number of symptoms.
Absolutely. And I think there's, going back to that living well with MS, there's a lot of link between keeping ourselves well and managing, all those symptoms.
Sorry, you're cutting in a little bit.
Yep. I was just saying that there is quite a link there with, what we talked about living well with your MS, and, your diet, your exercise, your stress management, positive thinking, all those kind of things all help with your management of your symptoms.
They really do.
Yeah.
They really do. Yeah, and sometimes people use, I guess, all of that approach in line with medication, and some people prefer to sort of manage it naturally themselves. So I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. It's like whatever works for the individual, but important that they know what is available so they can make that full decision.
Yeah. That's great. And I think it's, once again, just really reiterating it's about having all the information so you can make an informed decision for yourself as to what suits you best.
Definitely.
Well, look, Catherine and Gillian, thank you so much for joining us. Sorry once again for the technology issues, but I'm so pleased that you both managed to get on the call. So wonderful talking to you.
Well, thanks for having us. Sorry about the dog.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye, Shona. Bye.